So hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Roberts, WPS Business Development Manager, and I am joined by Amber Klein, Vice President of Research and Development, as well as the Project Director for the Tests of Dyslexia. We're here today to talk about remote administration of the Tests of Dyslexia. We are very lucky because Amber has been working on the Tests of Dyslexia project with the TOD authors for over 6 years, so we're lucky to have her with us today. Amber, I know how excited many professionals are about the Tests of Dyslexia and having this amazing resource on hand. We've gotten a lot of questions in regard to remote administration. Can the TOD be administered remotely?
Thank you, Stephanie. Absolutely, it can. It does, however, require some explanation because there's some complexities to it. There are different options and differences depending on which test you're using.
Okay, so how do you prepare to administer the TOD remotely?
So, as you would with any remote administration of an individual assessment, you would need to make sure that the examinee has a quiet place to work and a strong internet connection. Ideally, you would also have an adult proctor in the room to help make sure that the examinee stays on task, to assist with any technology issues, and just be there if you have any questions or need assistance. However, we know that some people are testing adolescents and adults, and in some cases, having a proctor is not feasible. And in those cases, that's okay. You just need to ensure that you can see them on screen the entire time and pay close attention to what they're doing.
Perfect, perfect. Would you mind giving us an overview of the materials?
I don't mind at all. I'm going to go ahead and start off by showing you the materials we have available online. So when you are logged into our evaluation system, under the TOD assessment, you can see that there are multiple tabs containing multiple materials. Here we have the manual and the norms, which you won't need for administration, but it's useful to know where it is. We also have the digital version of the TOD-S administration guide, which I'll mention later. In addition, here we have easels. So for example, we have the TOD-C easel 1, easel 2, and the TOD-E easels. There are 2 files. There's the administration guide. This contains everything that's on the examiner's side of the paper easel, all of the instructions and scoring criteria. Then we have the digital stimulus images, which contains what the examinee needs to see. So what is on the examinee side of the paper easel. You can see here that there is offline access to these easels if you prefer to download them and use them offline. And you would have received the email when you ordered the product. If you need help with this, click on more info or resend email, and you should be able to access that. One more final thing just to be aware of is that there's an audio file for one of the tests on the TOD-C. You will need to download this to your device, and you will need to play it when you are doing administration, whether remote or in person. So this is available here. So in addition to the files that I just showed that are available online, there are the paper materials, which you should have some familiarity with, but I just want to mention them here because you will be using some of them during the remote administration process. So as I showed, there is the digital online version of the administration guide for TOD-S. There also is a paper version. You also have paper easels, which you may want to use during administration. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And there also are paper response books for TOD-S, if you wish to choose that instead of the online option. And there's also a paper response book for the TOD-C. I'll explain how all of these work together in order to effectively do a remote administration.
Okay, so let me just see if I can summarize what you just said to make sure I understand. So the TOD-S, you can get an online kit or you can get a paper kit.
Correct.
And you can administer both remotely, but probably the simplest option would be the online version, correct? Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I'll go through how to do both.
Right.
I
Okay.
definitely would recommend the online.
Okay. But that doesn't come with any of the other kits. You would have to purchase that separately.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, great. So I know that the TOD-S, given what you just said, can stand alone. But But you also have to administer the TOD-S whenever you're giving the TOD-E and the TOD-C if you're looking to get a dyslexia diagnostic index, correct?
That is true. Yes.
Okay. Can you explain how the remote administration works for the TOD-S?
Sure. So you'll, as Stephanie said, you will be using TOD-S, whether you're using the TOD for screening purposes only, or if you're using one of the comprehensive options, the TOD-E or the TOD-C. TOD-S represents the first 3 tests of both of those. So no matter what you're doing, you will be administering TOD-S. So there, as I mentioned before, there are 2 options. I'll talk about the paper one first. So as you know, as I said, there is a paper booklet for the TOD screener. In order to give this test remotely, you would need to snail mail this form in advance to the examinee. However, it is essential that they not be looking at any of the content ahead of time. So if you do this, I recommend that you tape the outside with some kind of sticker or seal that you watch the examinee break on screen when you begin the assessment. This way you can ensure that they have not looked at the materials in advance. So then you will need access to either the digital or paper version of the TOD-S administration guide. And you will administer TOD-S the way that you would do as if you were in person, except you will be doing it via online video call. It's really important that you watch the examinee as they go in case they seem to have difficulty or you're not sure if they're doing things the way that they should be.
And if there's a proctor, they could help with that if it's a younger child. If it's an older person, an adolescent or an adult, and there is no proctor, then you really have to look at and make sure that what's happening, and especially for the third test, right? That one is timed, correct?
Yes, that one is timed. So you will need to time that by hand if you are having them use the paper version of the TOD-S.
Okay.
For in-person administration, there's no real difference, but remotely it's much easier to use the online version of TOD-S. So I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how you would access that and how you would share it, and then talk about how to walk through it. So in order to use the TOD-S online version, you would go to TOD on your OES homepage, and you would choose your client, and you would go to add a form. When you get to this point, you will go to one of these options, the TOD-S digital administration form, grades K to 1, 2 to 5, 6 to adult. And
So can I ask a question? I see other TOD-S there. So that's if you've used the paper version and you're going to now score it. But if you want to actually use the online administration, you would pick one of the top 3, the digital administration form. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So
Okay.
yes, these 3 below it are for free scoring for people who have purchased and used the paper form. So
Okay.
for example, if you chose to do the TOD using a paper form and you have the person send it back to you, then you can use this to do the online free scoring.
Okay.
I did forget to mention that, didn't I? That if you do the paper administration, you will need the examinee to return the form to you or take pictures right away or hold it up to show you. But no matter what you choose to do, you'll need to make sure that you can guarantee that they don't make any changes afterwards. So if they're not showing it to you at the moment or taking pictures at the moment where you can see them, you should ask them to re-tape or seal the form while you can see them do that before they send it back to you. Okay, going back to the digital administration. So I'm going to select this version because my client is in 8th grade. And I'm going to email it to them. So I'm going to send it to myself. Send form.
So when you're sending it, you wouldn't send it to yourself. You're just doing that right now, but you would send it to their email address or the proctor's email address if there is one in the room, if it's a child.
Yes.
But you would send it to the source in the room so that they can pull it up on the screen in front of you.
Right, exactly.
Do you recommend them sharing their screen when they're doing that?
Definitely, because then you can see how they are progressing through the test.
Perfect.
So now I will show you the email that I receive if I am the client
Recipient, yeah. Mm-hmm.
recipient. I received this email, and you shouldn't send this in advance because again, you don't want them clicking on it ahead of time.
Right.
Okay, so you get this email and you will click here or paste here. I'm going to click here and it's going to open up this new window. It's a blank screen because this is when you would then, as the examiner, begin the instructions for this test. And that's one reason why it's really important that you see the examinee's screen, that you have them share it with you. Ideally, you are watching both their face and what they are doing on screen at the same time. You give the instructions using either the paper or digital version of the administration guide. You would need a separate screen if you're using the administration guide digitally. And then you would instruct them to go through the examples first for the first one and so on. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but all of the items for the first two tests, picture vocabulary and letter and word choice, require that each answer be given. So each item needs a response before the program will let you continue. So here I've done the samples. Then let's say I go to the next one. No, these are not the right answers. And then I go to do this, but I've missed one. Tells me I have missing responses. I have to find the one that's missing, click on it before I continue. Okay, so once you reach test 3, you will give the instructions. And then as soon as the examinee clicks to the page of the first item, the timer will start. So unlike with the paper form where you will need to time the test yourself, the timer is embedded in the online program. So, and it will keep running until time runs out, and then the examinee will receive a screen that says time expired, and they'll be done. They will be asked to click a button that says submit, at which point it will come back to you, and you will go forward with validating and scoring that form.
Okay. So as we said before, it does sound like for the screener, because there's the student response booklet and there is that need for them to have it in front of them if you use the paper version, because there's this online version, it sounds like, you know, the examiner is going to have to decide whether they use the online or the paper version. Sounds like the online version of the screener is easier. And I know for younger individuals, you'll have to have the proctor. So it is a good idea to have the examinee share their screen so you can watch what they're doing. At this point, then, can we go ahead and jump into the TOD early, or the TOD E as we call it, and explain how that works? Or
Absolutely. So TOD E, as we said, begins with TOD S. So you would have administered the first 3 tests of TOD E already in one of the ways in which we've described. Then you would go to TOD E, and it requires use of the digital stimulus images that I showed at the beginning of this video. So you will need to navigate to that on screen, open it, or open your downloaded file, and share your screen so that the examinee sees their side of the easel. They see all of the stimulus images. For you, you have 2 options. You can open up the examiner side of the screen, which is referred to as the remote administration guide, or you can have a paper version of the easel up in front of you and go from there. It's really a personal choice about which works easier for you. But note that if you are using the digital version, you will need a separate screen because you want to make sure that that doesn't get shared to the examinee.
okay.
So, and there's nothing else that is unique about TOD E. You will administer it using the digital images, using your own administration guide, and you will record the individual's responses on your record form. With
Okay.
TOD S, you're not recording anything on paper at the time of administration. But with TOD E and TOD C, you will need a paper record form to record responses and scores.
Okay. So while WPS has provided the easels in PDF, the TOD E and TOD C are not the same as TOD S in that you don't have that option for it to be kind of a take it yourself on computer
Correct.
type of test. Okay. And I know that a lot of people are excited about the TOD-S because you can give it not just individually, but you could also give it in groups if you're there to proctor that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this is for remote administration.
Right.
Okay, so unlike the TOD screener, the TOD-E does not provide a link that you can send for an individual to take online, an online version of it. And also it requires the examiner to use that PDF, digital stimulus image. And then can the PDF of the digital stimulus images be, you said it could be downloaded, correct? Instead of using it online?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move to the TOD-C. Does that work similarly to the TOD-E?
It definitely does, in that you will need your digital stimulus images. You will need either the digital or paper version of the administration guide, and that you will need a paper record form. There is, however, one difference, which is that the TOD-C has a paper response booklet that you will need to send to the examinee in advance of a test administration. You should go ahead and seal it ahead of time and have them open it up while you are there. This booklet is required for 4 of the TOD-C tests. Test 5C, irregular word spelling. Test 8C, word pattern choice. Test 15C, regular word spelling. And test 16C, silent reading efficiency.
Can I ask you a question on that? So if somebody's only giving tests 1 through 9, including the 3 screeners, then they might only need to do this for 2 of the tests.
Correct.
But if they're going to give additional tests, they'll need it for the other 2. Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
So, and these are done in a couple of different ways. So the 2 spelling tests are administered the same way as each other, and they utilize basal and sealing rules. There is a later start point for older children, and you need to establish the required basal, and then you would stop at the necessary sealing, regardless of where you start. In order to do this, you need to know whether or not the item has been answered correctly as you go. So what you will need to do is you will need to ask the examinee to hold their response booklet up to the camera after each item so that you can quickly score, and in order to determine that the basal and sealing rules have been met completely. So that's a unique aspect of that particular, those particular tests, the spelling tests. For the other 2, there are timed, and so you will score them following the test administration. So you don't need them to show you anything as you go along. However, you do want to be watching them, and you want to make sure that they stop when time is up and that they're, moving through the test as you would expect them to. Because they're not showing you their responses on camera as you go, you will need to get those after the end of the test administration. And you can do this a couple different ways. You can ask them to show you, hold up each page to the camera following test administration. You can ask them to take pictures at that time and send them to you. Or you can ask them to seal the booklet up again and mail it back to you.
So either way, so whether you get the responses right away from the pictures or whichever method you use, you still always want them to mail back the booklet, correct? So that they don't have possession of the testing materials anymore. Is that accurate?
Great point. Yes, you definitely want to keep that because you'll want it for your records along with the rest of your testing materials.
Okay. And I know that there are some people who have talked about some other possible technology that could be used to put the camera on what the child is doing, or, there's lots of different technology out there, and people who have access to some and some do not. So, you can do the method of holding it up, or if you have some other creative way of technology, just as long as you can see what they're doing and you can watch and make sure you're monitoring, and then also, scoring those that have basals and sealing as you go along, you'll be okay. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other thoughts about TOD-C?
No, that should be it.
Okay.
I didn't mention specifically for this, though, you will need the paper record form as with TOD-E. And then you can, for both TOD-E and TOD-C, as with TOD-S, you can score by hand, or you can go ahead and use the free online scoring and reporting, which I strongly recommend because there are a lot of calculations required in scoring due to the wealth of information that the TOD provides. So I highly recommend using that method of scoring.
Okay, so let me see if I can recap what you said.
Okay,
So TOD Screener has a full online version that they can you can administer, and it will automatically score after you validate online. You can score it online. That's the
correct.
complete online version. This is something that is purchased on its own. Then you have the paper version, but the paper version of the screener you will have to deal with timing on the third test, and you also have to just monitor what they're doing and make sure they haven't looked at the booklet before they start. For the TOD E and the TOD C, what you have are options of purchasing separate from the kit a TOD E easel, which is a PDF, and a TOD C easel 1 and 2, which are PDFs as well. And you can then do a remote administration, but they'll still need the response booklet. They'll still have to utilize that for the TOD C, but not the TOD E. You'll need also the record form for both the TOD E and the TOD C, but for the TOD S, you don't need to score it as you're going along. You wait until, even the paper version, you wait till you get the information back, and then you do the scoring. All of the scoring for the paper versions of all 3 tests are available online. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then also online, you can then, after you've scored, you can generate for no cost a score report, which includes interpretive information, and you can also do an intervention report utilizing the intervention piece. And then if you utilize the rating forms, which we haven't talked about today, which are completely online, which are helpful because you can give them to a parent, a teacher, or if the child is old enough, you can have them fill out the self-report. That also comes with a score report, but also you can do rater comparisons with that. I think I've summed it up, but am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think you covered everything and then some. I did just want to say one quick thing, though, which is that when you are using the online scoring, you need to score the TOD S test first. So if you're using a paper administration, you will want to select that free online scoring form for TOD S first. Go ahead, finish it, score it, generate the report, and then you would go and score the TOD E or TOD C, whichever you've administered. And then at the end of the scoring of those tests, you will then select the TOD S administration to include in that administration.
Okay, yeah, because when you're about to, if you have it already done, the TOD S, and you're about to finish up with the TOD C, and score it, it'll say, would you like to include the TOD S? And then it'll give you the option to choose that. Okay, great. All right, that sounds wonderful. Okay, well, if anyone has any questions about remote administration, you can check out our website at wpspublish.com. And you can also contact your representative as well, whether you are nationally. You can, if you're in the US, then you can contact your assessment consultant, which is at consult@wpspublish.com. If you are international, you can contact your one of our publishing partners and get information from them as well. So thank you very much for joining us today, Amber. We
Absolutely.
really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us about the tests of dyslexia.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.